Watch glitches. So I wanted to make a video in response to Khalid here, who has kindly helped me out in the past and is asking a lot of questions around the AMM, which is quite timely given that the AMM is being launched now with a high degree of probability on the 22nd to 23rd of March. And essentially, in this thread here, Khalid has suggested a DoS, denial of service attack vector that could potentially use the automated market maker. And I've tried to explain to him why that isn't a good idea. A, it's probably not possible, and B, while it's absolutely possible to carry out a denial of service attack on any decentralized uh, kind of infrastructure or decentralized ledger, there are better ways than doing it than this. And the other thing is, I think that some of the misconceptions that Khalid has in creating this strategy or this attack vector, I think are useful for to explore so other people don't make the same mistakes. And the purpose of this video, and I reached out to Khalid to ask him if he's okay with me making this video, and he absolutely is. I think it will serve as a different way of learning about the AMM. And there are some interesting things that come out of this. There are some open questions that do come out of this exchange that I've had with Khalid. So let's jump in. And yeah, I do meme a lot, guys. So if you're on X, grow a pair of balls. you know, luckily with most of these memes, we take them in good spirits, right? Don't be too sensitive about them. But the first thing I did, like when we were exchanging with Khalid, is try and understand exactly what he was doing. And we get to this point here where I try to verify my understanding of the attack vector that he believes is possible. So what Khalid has said is that he starts off by issuing free tokens on the XRPL ABC. These are his essential shit coins, essentially, that he's creating in order to. He creates a vast amount of these tokens. Anyone can do it. It takes a few minutes to issue an asset on the XRPL. It's absolutely permissionless, so anyone can do this. That's fine. You can go ahead and create tokens with, I don't know, trillions of circulating supply on the XRPL. Then the next thing he does is that he creates 3 AMMs with his shitcoins. So we have, if we've issued A, B, and C, the automated market maker can take a pair of assets for its liquidity pool. So we have 3 pools with AB, AC, and CB. And let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the ratio of these assets in each pool is 1-to-1. So pool AB has as many A as it does of B assets in its pool, and so on. Then, essentially, we begin to initiate transactions against these AMMs with the aim of flooding the network by spending, in this instance, 5,000 a day to generate transactions. So I think the first thing that this is all doable. This, if you've got this kind of money, you can absolutely start, generating a synthetic load on these transactions. And what would happen is that the AMM would you would exchange a asset. You send a transaction to say to the AMM, I want A asset and here's some B for it, and that the AMM would then return your A asset to your wallet. You have a client that will submit transactions to the XRPL, and the AMM would attempt to satisfy those transactions that have been submitted to it. One of the things that Khalid kind of has a misconception of is the capability of the AMM. So he keeps saying that the AMM has the ability, you would daisy chain the AMMs to transact with each other. That is not possible. The AMM does not generate any transactions. Okay, so that's a misconception number one, Khalid. Okay, the AMM is simple. All it does is it provides an exchange rate for the assets that it holds in its pool. It doesn't do anything clever. Okay, it doesn't try to rebalance its pool by generating its own trades. It doesn't do that. All trades have to come from a client connected to the XRPL that's submitting those transactions. So this daisy chain effect here. So let me read out what Khalida said. Yes, that was my first draft using AMMs to generate spam. Later, I decided to expand upon it after a comment from David, that's David Schwartz, and build out the AMM daisy chain effect using 7 shitcoins, generating transactions from both trading against them and high frequency depositing to them. Okay, so there is no deposition of an asset to directly to an AMM. What you would do is swap assets in and out of the AMM, and the AMM will give you an exchange rate for that swap. Okay, the AMMs cannot be daisy chained, right? As we said earlier, AMMs cannot generate transactions. They can't trade with themselves or with anyone else. All they do is offer an exchange rate based on their bonding curve. And the bonding curve is the algorithm that does its best to rebalance the number of assets in the pool. And it simply does this by, if an asset is depleted, taken away from the pool, the exchange rate offered for the next transaction will favor anyone who's putting that asset back into the pool. So the costs will change within the AMM to try and keep the pool balanced. You get disincentivized for drawing more of a depleted asset. You get incentivized for providing the depleted asset. So again, David did point out immediately that the AMMs don't generate transactions, Khalid. And we keep saying this, right? This seems to be central to your attack vector. AMMs cannot create transactions, okay? And this daisy chaining effect doesn't exist, right? You cannot create a daisy chain. What you would need is a client to send transactions to different AMMs. So you create your little spam bot on AWS, 10 of them, and they would have to do separate trades with the AMMs, with the tokens being deposited back into their wallets, and then initiate another transaction with another AMM. Right? There is no daisy chaining. It all has to be orchestrated by the client. And this is where I kind of ask about the daisy chaining, and I say like, so Khalid asked, how do the AMMs rebalance themselves? I said, they don't rebalance themselves, right? They have a bonding curve, which issues an exchange rate, which then incentivizes arbitrageurs to come in and rebalance the pool. And all that is really providing a better exchange rate. Arbitrageurs will see this exchange rate in the AMM kind of as a balance is depleted, the exchange rate favors the depleted asset in comparison to what? Well, in comparison to either the DEX or the CLOB within the XRPL AMM or on an external exchange. Okay. Now here you have these 3 shitcoins that you've issued. They don't exist on any other exchange. They're all on the XRPL. So there's really no demand. So as the spammer, there's no external demand. As the spammer, you have to create all of the synthetic demand to shift all of these pools in assets from liquidity pools in and out of your own wallets. You're the one doing all of the grunt work. There's no one else involved. Right? You have to generate all the synthetic load. So I do state this here. Who do you think are the arbitrageurs for the 6 AMMs? Where do you think the liquidity is coming from? And this is what I said. Well, that would be you, Khalid, spending more than $5,000 a day on your synthetic load generation, because you will have to also send transactions to bid for the arbitration slots of the AMM, because no one else will touch them. So the AMM provides arbitrageurs with a greater incentive than just the exchange rate. It gives them an incentive to bid for a slot that will allow them to trade for 24 hours with 0 fees. So that's an additional incentive for a professional arbitrager to say, hey, look, I can see this very juicy looking exchange rate on this appalling AMM that Khalid has set up. And maybe I want to bid to be able to even lower my or gain a greater kind of profit, if you like, by eliminating my transaction fees. The problem is, Khalid, that like no one knows about your shit coins, no one wants to touch your shit coins. So you have to be the arbitrager. So what you've done now is that you've created a bunch of bots that are doing synthetic transactions between these AMMs, and then you're probably going to have to create like a separate bot or assign a bot to bid for arbitrage slots in order to benefit from the eliminated arbitration fee to get in at that kind of to be able to trade against the AMM with an advantage over other participants. So here we say bidding, what bidding, and there isn't going to be any bidding for fees on my AMMs. And I point to the documentation here where there is the concepts around, and I think there's an image. Unfortunately, there isn't an image. But essentially, I just point to the documentation that describes how the arbitration bidding works, right? Now, there's one interesting thing that did come up from this conversation is what if there are no arbitrages for an AMM? What actually happens? I would like to ask that question. Again, highly improbable that there won't be anyone bidding for these slots. What I imagine will happen is that simply participants, ordinary participants trading against the exchange simply don't benefit from the reduction in fees because they're not bidding for them. But the AMM is untouched, is my understanding. It'll continue to function normally without anyone bidding for the arbitration slots. So we can discount the arbitrages entirely for Khalid's scenario here. And I think I make a point to that. So say the fee structure can be, okay, so Khalid comes back with this. Rules can be changed according to the 8 largest LP providers. And that's correct. The 8 largest liquidity providers in an AMM get privileges. And those privileges are being able to change the rules. But let's be clear on what the rules that they can change. So he obviously, Khalid here has created the AMMs and he's provided the liquidity. So his shitcoin AMMs, he is the largest LP provider and he gets to change the rules. So he says AMM rules can be changed according to 8 largest LP providers, liquidity providers. Guess who they are? Also, liquidity is provided by the CLOB, where trillion coins can be. CLOB is a closed limit order book on the XRPL, where 100 trillion coins can be bidding at an offset price. Guess who will own the wallets bidding on those coins? Okay, so he's essentially saying, I'm the owner of the AMM and I can change the rules of the AMM. And I said, well, yeah, the fee structure can be changed, but not the actual implementation of the AMM. You can't, like, again, all you can do, and I apologize if I'm like not 100% specific with this, and I'm simplifying it, so I may not be able to get all of the details of the AM correct, but all you can do is really change the fee structure. You can't change the way the AMM operates if you're running an AMM, right? That's hard coded and deployed. The only way that gets changed is through deploying new code, right, to the XRPL, and you can't do that. You have to go through the amendment process to do that. So good luck. I mean, all you can do is change the fee structure. And then we get here. So I just say, I think you're clutching at straws here. The AMM is designed to offer, let me just open this up. The AMM is designed to offer arbitration slots. I'm not sure what the behavior of the AMM will be if no arbitrager bids on these slots, but I imagine it simply means no buyer benefits from reduced fees and the liquidity pool won't generate additional fees, but it will continue to function providing an exchange rate and essentially processing requests against it. In your scenario, this is irrelevant as your client is going to buy, sell at whatever price the AMM or exchange rate is a better word to use, whatever exchange rate the AMM presents for the asset, no matter how low that exchange rate is. All of these transactions are generated by your client, not the AMM, and hence we go back to why bother with this attack vector. If you want to overwhelm the network with transactions, you can do that with wallets or even better, NFT transactions. AMMs will not generate transactions on your behalf. They won't amplify your attack. At best, if you created lots of AMMs, you may produce some additional CPU load, but eventually some sort of action would be taken against you. And that action would be, so I just want to make this clear to people, if there's an existential threat to a network, it's not as if there'll be no response from the network, right? An amendment, I imagine, would be raised to take some kind of remediative action against overwhelming spam bot, yeah? And if you have, maybe it could even result in potentially, whatever the amendment process approves, that action can be taken to prevent the network. And I don't think that's a big deal, if it goes through, even banning a wallet. Sorry, but if it turns out that we know there are 20 wallets that are generating a ton of load, I don't think it will go to banning a wallet, but some kind of remediative action could be taken through an amendment procedure where the network participants decide we got a bad actor and we got to do something about it. I think that's completely uncontroversial. I tell him to get himself an AI assistant to come up with a better attack vector. And I'm not sure he took my advice. Khalid, get yourself an AI assistant. I mean, one of the things I do is I run the XRPL code through cursor.sh and query it directly, which is it's AI enabled IDE, and it gives you a bit more insight into the potential weaknesses in the source code. So we go back and forth a little bit again, and I think, Khalid, you keep coming back to this notion. That's why I keep saying that this whole attack vector where you're using AMMs to try and amplify your spam transactions doesn't work. All right, because the AMM doesn't create transactions. I mean, you're really missing this. And the AMM is a simple component with no real ability to provide anything other than bidding slots for arbitrages and an exchange rate for the asset pairs that it holds. And it's simple for a reason, precisely to stop this kind of unintended consequence occurring. If you created a more sophisticated AMM that tries to be clever and do things like exchange with other AMMs or other exchanges, you wouldn't put that logic in the AMM because all sorts of unintended consequences would occur. Instead, what you would do is build other components that orchestrate transactions on top of the DEX, on top of the CLOB, and directly against the AMM. And that's what I'm saying by the time we get down to here in this conversation, where I think I wrap it up, where, again, we've gone over this multiple times now. The AMM isn't forced to do anything other than provide an exchange rate for its liquidity pair based on the ratio of those assets in its pool. As one asset is depleted, the exchange rate for removing more than that asset becomes costlier as per the bonding curve of the AMM, the algorithm that tries to incentivize a balanced ratio of those assets. And I point you back to this diagram that I created a while back for people that want to see how all of this kind of hangs together. As far as I understand it, pinned to my Twitter account is this diagram where I show at the top left-hand corner here, we've got Ripple, its partners, we've got Ripple Pay, we've got Liquidity Hub, we've got Prisma, how that interacts with the XRPL, upon which we have the decentralized exchange, the CLOB, and then the AMM, right? So it's absolutely possible for these higher level actors to orchestrate transactions across AMMs and to indeed attempt to spam the network with transactions. But I think we get to this point where the total number of transactions today, as far as I can see, the highest we've ever had is just under 7 million transactions in a day. For Khalid to be able to execute a meaningful attack, it would have to be over that. So he kind of came up with 10 million transactions if you really wanted to hammer the network. but drop the AMM. The AMM doesn't help you in creating a spam. I think you're really conflating, you're bringing the AMM into denial of service attack by misunderstanding what it's capable of doing. And the fundamental thing that it can't do is generate transactions. So it's not going to amplify your attack. So unfortunately, you're back to, yeah, if you've got a big enough wallet, you can go ahead and attack the XRPL, but the AMM ain't going to help you. So I'll leave it at that, Khalid. I think this has been useful. The arbitration thing, what happens if there are no arbitrages at all? That got me thinking initially, and it's like, well, I guess no one benefits from the fees. So that was useful. But I hope other people find this useful as well. And Khalid, I'm not going to answer any more questions on this. You flogged the dead horse here, dude. It's move on. Come up with a better attack vector. Thanks. Bye.